Salem, Oregon, coming to you live from Corbin University with Mike Ponce. I'm Jordan Keegan, and this is The Mike Jordan Show.
Hello, everybody. Today we have a pretty different show than the past two that we've had. We have our first guest, which we've referenced in other episodes, but our first guest is going to be Joshua Anderson. Welcome, Josh. So here he is. Clap. We can't hear you, but I know you're doing it. Hello, Josh. Welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So Josh, he's a soccer player at Corbin. He also does track here. What events are you doing for track?
So I'm going to do triple jump, long jump, and the 4x100 relay.
And you guys had a meet last weekend that you could not do, correct?
I could not. I found out the day before the meet, so
yeah,
that was fun.
Just Corbin things, you know?
Yeah.
Wait, what happened during the soccer season, though?
Oh, the NAI placed my name with different set of transcripts. Wow. And I wasn't eligible for like 4 weeks to play, so it's a great start to my freshman year.
Josh missed every single preseason game we could play.
Yeah.
Correct.
He's a great singer. He sang the national anthem at Corbin many times. Beautiful every time.
Beautiful voice. We love a good singer.
Yeah, last year Josh came on a visit with our team, and it was either the beginning huddle or the end huddle, he says, and Josh is a great singer, so that was the first taste of Josh Anderson music that we got.
Impression.
Yeah.
Beautiful voice.
Put on the spot.
What kind of music do you like to sing?
I grew up singing gospel in a Pentecostal church, so I like singing gospel and probably like R&B and soul. A little bit of jazz, but not too much, but yeah.
And then what kind of music, like similar to listen to?
Yeah. I listen to a lot of 90s, 2000s R&B, kind of generic black people music, but you know. And then I listen to a lot of, I also listen to a lot of old, like just Motown sound, kind of old soul and jazz and gospel.
So no country?
Heck no.
Yeah, no country on the show.
Yeah, no country music on this show, in case you guys didn't know that.
Yeah.
If you like country music, I'm sorry.
I mean, we have Rolling as our intro song.
It's not it, Chief.
You need to get some better music in your life.
I mean, although if we have a good country singer trying to come on the show, come on the show.
Yeah, we'll listen to your yeehaw music.
No, just kidding.
So trying to figure out how to introduce you, we asked you some of your interests. You said you like to sing. You said you like to write. What do you like to write about?
I write songs, so I'm not a poem writer or anything.
Yeah.
I don't have the devotion to do that stuff, so I just write music, kind of whatever comes to mind. So yeah, I'm in the process of writing my 5th song. So
Ooh.
yeah.
Maybe he's gonna debut it on the show.
Maybe.
He's like, oh no.
On the spot. And you're from Tacoma, Washington. Tell us a little bit about Tacoma.
Tacoma. It's definitely different than Salem here, where we're filming this. Tacoma's, where I grew up, was all black, and I was a Boys and Girls Club kid, and it's a lot more crime, I guess, gang activity and stuff like that. So it's just a little bit different than here, but I like how settled down it is here. So, but it is definitely a change from what I'm used to.
What part of Tacoma did you live in?
I lived in University Place, but where I went to school and like where I would catch the bus because my mom didn't like giving me rides because she disowned me sometimes. It was called Hilltop.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then sometimes I go to the east side, but usually Hilltop.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Salem, very chill place, but
We love Salem.
he loves Salem. Boring, but we love Salem.
Yeah, it's a little boring.
Yeah.
It seems like everything closes at 10 o'clock.
Or
PM.
5:30.
But
Or
you're
5:30. Yeah. Shout out downtown. So you kind of just talked about high school. Like, what was your high school experience like?
It was
growing up
a
in private school?
small private school. Everybody knew me, especially because I was the only black thing on campus. So that was fun. That was awesome. A lot of snitches, but I mean, I liked it. It was a Christian school, and they cared about you and they cared about the students. So I appreciated that, and I appreciate that also about Corbin. So it was overall good high school experience for me, and middle school even.
So there wasn't much diversity. terms of?
Not at all. It was all.
So I guess you would say you could count it on a hand.
Yes. In fact, I could tell you how many were in our class of 36 people. It was literally 6 black people.
Honestly, that was.
And of course, I was the darkest, so that just made it even better. It was a great experience.
How do you feel like that affected your experience? Like, did people point that out a lot, or did you feel
Oh yeah,
singled out a lot?
Yes. Even when I first got there, they're like, "That's a really plain name. Like, your name doesn't really match your color." And I was just like, "Huh." And that was kind of my first taste. Like when I first got there in first grade, and there was a lot of racial things like that happened. But overall, I think as a person, it kind of crafted me to think outside the box, whereas most African Americans only think about issues in their community and it's us against everybody else. I think I kind of learned to look at both sides, and I was inside and like behind the scenes of kind of how other people, mainly Caucasian people, think about racial issues, and it kind of made me more aware of issues in my community and like problems that we have within our community. So I definitely appreciate that upbringing as much as I didn't like it as much. But
How has that changed over the years?
Well, when I grew up, finally, like, I'd always grown up around a lot of black people, so it was different at home and after school at the Boys and Girls Club and at the YMCA and stuff like that versus when I was at school. So, like, I would hear certain things at school and I would be like, huh, that's interesting. And I would go to, wherever afterwards, whether that be soccer practice even or etc., where there's more different like backgrounds of people, and I would hear things where I'm like, that makes sense now. Like I would hear things in school, or I'd hear things at the Boys and Girls Club, and I'd hear, wow. And you learn like racism is like, once you learn how it's like perpetuated and how it can sometimes be undercover, then you start detecting it undercover. So like I'd be in classes and there'd be little microaggressive comments, and I'd be like, that's interesting. And so you kind of
just discovered it's still very present. And kind of my sophomore year is like probably the biggest year I finally, not even sophomore year, probably like in high school, sophomore year is the biggest time I realized. But when I started really realizing it was like 7th, 8th grade. It's just like, wow, it's real and it's not gone, and you're not safe just because you go to a private school. It's actually worse. So yeah, I feel like that's kind of the view some people might have is at a Christian school, like
private Christian, but sometimes the label Christian is not exactly reflected on the person's heart.
Donald Trump. Example number 1.
So but I appreciate my upbringing, and I wouldn't change it, even though there were times back then I definitely would have wanted to. But
I appreciate you coming out and saying that, because it takes a lot. So I mean, I'm obviously Mexican, and so it was different for me, but a lot of what I've experienced is through my parents. Because I went to a public school, a very big public school here in Salem, and a lot of times it wasn't, targeted at me, but I know that there was stuff going around that,
It's different for everybody. I mean, it happens in public schools even too, and even right now, Mexicans are under attack. Basically, if you're in America, you're literally under. They're like, there's a little bit of oppression, but there's a difference between like oppression and being attacked, and I think you're on the border of being attacked. So I think you guys have your issues too. We all do have issues. Even the Caucasian people have their issues. I mean, I think sometimes that was probably the biggest thing I learned was. I think that's probably the biggest thing I learned is like African Americans. Sometimes we get caught a lot of times in this view that we're the only people group going through things, and it's like every different race, gender, sexuality, anything has their own problems, and you don't understand it unless you learn to mix and mingle with different people. And so,
and we just want to make something clear. There's obviously a lot going on in the world right now. And there's other issues like global warming, and this is just one of them. There's a lot that we could talk about, but it just so happened to be something that that it happens to you, and you know from first-hand experience. I mean,
if we don't talk about it, then how does it get addressed?
Exactly.
And so I think more people need to just talk about it openly and be fine with it.
So there's been reports. I was going through Twitter the other day. There's been reports of molestation in like camps at the
Mhm.
border.
Mm.
Have you seen that? Have you heard anything about it?
Unfortunately, yes. I've seen that everywhere on Twitter and on Facebook. So, yeah, it's terrible. And the worst part is, as soon as that happens, it's like, oh, it's fake news.
Yeah.
Anytime something horrible happens, and there's the word "at the border" or the words "at the border," it's fake news.
Well,
it's just liberals.
It started at
Yikes.
they're being held over
Mhm.
illegally, and so that's where it starts.
Yeah.
And then it just goes from there.
Yeah.
And so the issue is having them in those not concentration camps, but those deportation centers,
Mhm.
and that's where the issue starts, and
Yep.
then it just keeps going.
We're afraid to call it out.
Yeah.
Oh, we trust. I'm gonna say this, and I say it with no fear. I don't know how people trust the American government fully. I don't understand it.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody's different, but there's things that happens, and it's sanctioned under the U.S. government and the statutes that the U.S. government sets.
Mhm.
But morally, as a person, you got to think, is that all right?
Yeah.
Especially if they're children.
Yeah.
It's like, it's worse. It's awful no matter what. But if it's children, it's like, what have they done?
Yeah, and I think that's kind of stems from just the bipartisan political system we have.
Mhm.
So only having like Democrat or Republican is two main things. People are brought up thinking one way that their parents instill in them,
Mhm.
and then they think that everything that like political group believes has to be their own view.
Yeah. No. I get that. Yeah.
Mhm.
I think I know what you're trying to say.
And I think, like for me, like I kind of have a similar education as Josh. Obviously, I'm not a person of color, but I grew up in a private school, Christian school, in Portland, Oregon, and like almost everyone there was conservative,
Mhm.
just because their parents were. Whereas like my parents they're like liberal, so I grew up seeing both sides,
Mhm.
and I think that's why I see that it's really dangerous to like align yourself with one. So I'll never be like, yeah, I'm voting for this person because they're a Democrat, or I'm voting this person because they're a Republican.
Mhm.
Because I think there's just idiots on both sides, and
Yep.
too many stupid things on both sides that everyone just agrees with
two
because
sides
they
are
blindly
just-
agree.
I think what you're trying to get to you just got to be careful with what.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's no perfect party,
Yeah.
You have
Like
to
there's
step
no
out
way you're
yourself.
gonna 100% agree with
Mhm.
everything. You need to
Yeah.
realize that, and people don't.
You got to step out yourself. And like to your point, yeah, I think a lot of people, both liberals and conservatives, they just like they hear their parents say something, and I think that's just like kind of how it starts.
Or even
And
their
it's
peers,
just-
like
yeah,
most of their peers.
peer pressure.
Yeah, like
I'm
on
glad
Twitter,
you brought that up.
Like on Twitter, like you hear, like a lot of your friends are tweeting stuff, and you're
Mhm.
like, oh, so I'm gonna have to believe this.
Or retweet it.
So like, it's not about what you believe. It's not about what others believe. It's about what you
Mhm.
believe, and not just following what they believe.
Mhm.
And
And
you have
interesting enough, my parents. So my mom is from Texas, and my dad is from Georgia, and the South is just different.
Yeah.
So much different than up here. Like, people would be culture shocked if they went down to the South versus up here. And they both grew up like in the church, like strict like Pentecostal churches. And so my parents are actually, my dad, I'd say more so than my mom, is pretty conservative on some issues. But like, there's a difference between quote unquote 2 fingers up, black conservatives and like white conservatives.
Mhm.
There's a difference, and it's just interesting because like growing up with that, I heard that, and in my school's mainly like conservative, but like where I'm originally from is Seattle, Washington, and there's everybody in every corner of the earth and spectrum.
Yeah.
There's everybody there. So like here, it's like it's more narrow. I don't want to say narrowed down, but like there's not as much
Diversity.
as melting pot. Yes,
Yeah,
diversity. So like I kind of had to like adjust to seeing and being around everybody.
Yeah.
So that's why I find myself much more tolerant than a lot of people.
Yeah.
So I think it's just
Yeah, it's different up here because
Mhm.
you don't. I mean, even here, we're at Corbin, where it's not super diverse. And-
Yeah, if we didn't have athletic teams.
yeah.
But I mean, we're not trying to. It's nothing on Corbin. It's just the way
it's
it
just-
is.
Some schools are like
Yeah.
that. Just
And
as
they've been working on
HBCUs.
trying to figure out
Oh, yeah,
ways,
we have-
because like I'm in marketing class where or last semester where one of the group's projects was specifically looking at like how to market towards Latino students.
Yeah.
like demographics and stuff.
Mhm.
We had a chapel on that, and I thought it was really good how the speaker engaged everybody. I think that's key, is engaging everybody. If you just engage one group, then another group's gonna feel attacked.
Not directing it at one group.
Yeah, it's gotta be like we all need to work together because we do. Every single person on this earth needs to work at being better with other people. That's
being brothers.
Just the sin nature, and that's just how the world is.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's not. I think it's true that there is a blanket of, oh, that's racist. This is racist. And it's poisoning everything. We want to blame it on racism, but we don't want to blame it on ourselves when it's really like our hearts. That's at the heart of the issue. So, yeah.
What do you think about the statement or the statement of where they talk about it's taught or something like that?
Oh, it's institutionalized, kind of like that. I think. Oh, yeah, I could get into that, but I think yes, there's institutionalized racism, and private school can be one of the good examples of it. I remember when Trump was running, and like this is nothing bashing Trump, but like there was people at the school who didn't, they didn't necessarily like Trump or they didn't agree with what he said, and the school literally was like, and it's microaggressive. That's the thing. Like when I say it's microaggressive, it's like see, because like me and you and like obviously you guys, we can take jokes, but some people don't know because they've been bullied or etc. or peer pressured if it's a joke or it's like, oh, I should actually listen. So the school would be like, you're kind of an idiot if you don't vote for Trump. Like, if you don't vote for Trump, I don't know how you, we want to make America great again. And, like, if you don't vote for Trump, you're kind of dumb. And it just kind of coerced. And because minorities are already quiet at our school, they thought we had to flow. And I was one of the few people, and I was just like, no, like, vote for who you think. If you think Trump is a good leader, then I have respect for that.
Yeah.
I respect you because that's what you think, and you develop mindset.
Yeah, but at the same time...
But I think the way it's institutionalized is if you're, as a school, basically pushing people, like, if you don't vote for Trump, you're wrong. If you don't do this, that's where I think it's institutionalized. And that's just an example of a small setting. But
yeah, so going to a bigger school, Mike.
Big
like,
settings.
you obviously went to bigger schools than us.
Mm-hmm.
No,
did you see that?
I mean, at the time, I graduated in 2016.
The
year before then.
Definitely a different time.
But it was a different time, and I don't know. It was different, and I feel like my sister goes to high school right now, and she's a sophomore in high school, and she has a friend that she has on Snapchat that's always, putting that stuff out there, and I kind of just told her like, hey, you just kind of just let it be.
Yeah.
People will have their own opinions, and you just kind of have to respect their own.
You got to pick and choose your battles.
And so,
definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's just interesting, like to your point. I remember when Obama became president and how the school was.
Yeah. That's my president.
The school was opposed. Oh, they were opposed. They didn't even want to show the stream.
Yeah.
They didn't want to show the stream, and we just don't believe in what he promotes.
Yeah.
But it's obviously like, it was a racial thing too. Like, I mean, nobody thought there'd be a black president before.
Yeah, no one was willing to say that.
Nobody. I just remember watching him I was 8, and but I just remember that. Like, I remember how hard it was for us as a school. I had a teacher who liked seeing both sides of things too, but they were more liberal. They were kind of more liberal side though of things, and she pushed to get it like shown and streamed. When Trump got elected, they showed everything on every screen, but there was only one classroom to show Obama, Democratic, black president, and that's where I think it's institutionalized.
Yeah. So. Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the whole election piece because when Trump was elected, that was, especially for our community, because we were under attack the whole time.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like, because he was talking about, we're going to deport half of this minority group. And so, I mean, I'm not trying to put my parents on blast, but I'm speaking for other groups and other parents. There's a lot of fear in the Mexican or immigrant community that they were going to get deported.
Yeah,
and
so I fear for you guys, and I'm not even anywhere tied to that community. But
and I had a lot of friends there, oddly enough, they were white, and they're like, hey, you don't have to worry about anything. And it's pretty easy to say that at the time because, you're white, you have nothing to worry about. And that's really harsh to say, but it's true.
Yeah, and I think it's hard. Like, there's things our community needs to hear, a.k.a. we hate to see other African Americans succeed. We tear it down as soon. Oh, they didn't do anything. They ain't ish. They ain't that hot. And just celebrate the success. Like, we don't get that. We don't get promoted for our successes. We get promoted for, oh, this person was shot and killed. I thought it was crazy about the Google search thing where, like, if you looked up black people or African American or whatever they typed it in, it was all people in jail. It was all mugshots. Okay, I don't know if you know, but, like, there's this thing on Google. There's a viral video, maybe like 2-3 years ago. And it was like this guy typed in black family or black people. And it was all of them in mugshots in jail clothes. But then they typed in white families, and it was just like smiling, smiling
like
portraits,
stock photos.
And and Google had to apologize for it, and it was true because I even looked it up myself, and because I was like, you can't believe everything you see.
Yeah.
But I looked it up, and sure enough, it's true, and that's what's portrayed in the media. It really is just portrayed in the media.
They've changed that.
Yeah.
Looking it up right now.
Yeah, Google had to apologize and change it. I remember looking that up at the Boys and Girls Club on the computers we got, and I was like, there's no way. And we looked it up and we were shocked. See, I don't know. I fear for the Hispanic community, honestly. Like,
I mean, it's kind of toned down.
Yeah.
Just because it's been 2 years now since.
Right now, but
And it's still gonna. I mean, there's still fear. I mean, there was fear when DACA was about to be torn down, and I don't know. It just so happens it's like that.
Mm-hmm.
I was gonna do something for. It's called the Immersion Project, where we go down and spend the night. And we spoke about this, but we spend the night at the deportation center.
Oh.
That's kind of why we brought it up. Why I brought it up with you is, there's a lot of issues going down there that we don't talk about.
Yeah.
And one of the arguments I don't like about racism as a whole is, we were talking about Trump supporters in general, or just picking sides in general. It's just people often say, "Oh, hey, it doesn't exist," or it's not associated with Trump, where Trump has, actively made comments. Yeah. So. Yeah.
He's from Lyndon, Washington, which is it's just basically really north. It's literally like 10 minutes on the Canadian border, and he's just like, and what he said baffled me. And like, he was like, racism, it's like bad, and he didn't believe that cops, like, as soon as I said, yeah, cops are murdering people, he's like, if they'd stop breaking the law, they wouldn't get murdered. And then he said, and love my roommate. Like, this is just one of the things we just differ on, and we agree to disagree. And at the end of the day, we're fine with it. But he is like, I think this victim mentality just needs to end, because that was in the 60s. And I was like, do people realize, like my friend Toby, she lives in Agar. Her great grandfather was a slave. It's like, it's not that long ago. It's 70, 60.
It's 3-4
years ago that we were allowed to vote. We couldn't vote in a country that we got brought into. Like, unintentionally, we got brought into it. We didn't want to be brought into it.
Not only that, but they made black people fight in the Civil War.
Right.
Like,
they fought the wars. We cured people, and they didn't want to let us even so much as vote. And like, the way that was microaggressives, they wouldn't be like, no, you can't vote. However, I watched I forgot. It was Selma, actually. Really good movie. Recommend all of you guys watch it. Anybody. It'll change your mindset. Because we don't really realize what happened back then. And us African Americans, I think, also lose sight of what we fought, how hard we fought to get where we are. It's not perfect, but it sure as hell is better than what we came from. In the 60s and the 50s, getting sprayed down with fire hoses, having to have National Guard just to go to school. National Guard. I remember the first girl to go into integrated schools is still alive. She's only late 50s, I believe.
Yeah, it wasn't that long ago.
Literally not that long ago. That's our parents.
She had a terrible time.
And it's like we don't realize. And then like in that movie about the voting rights, the woman came in to like turn in her ballot, and there was a white woman in front of her, and the lady at the front desk gave her 2 questions, and then she passed and got her license. The black woman gave up the vote, and they gave her a whole 15 question like worksheet to just answer. And they were impossible questions.
Irrelevant ones.
I know.
Too.
I could.
No, I mean, that's something else we can get into. Is just like the immigration process.
It's just like, how special are we because we were. Okay, I want to be careful saying this, but when people talk about they come in our country and blah 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 and they bring drugs. Yeah. How special are we that we were born in America?
Yeah.
What makes us so much more special that we were by luck.
Yeah.
Born here.
Yeah.
Whereas someone's born 20 minutes south and they're not born here.
Mm-hmm. We could talk about that soon, but I want to ask Jordan a question because I mean I don't want to put you on blast, but I think we obviously have different upbringings.
Yeah, all three of us.
All three of us do. I mean everyone does, but I think I want to get your perspective on all of this because, like you said, you spoke a little bit about private school, and then you spoke about your outlook on a lot of this.
I think a lot of people don't realize that privilege exists when they're white or wealthy.
Mm-hmm.
Like I've always been very grateful for everything I have.
Yeah.
And my parents, like, they kind of came out of nothing. So, like, their parents, none of them went to college. My mom's mom had her when she was 15. And then she had her sister when she was 17. So, they didn't really come out of much. And then just like I was the first one to really go to college. Like, my parents both went to college but dropped out. My dad got his associate's degree, and he's, like, made a good career out of it. But, I don't know. One day in class, we were talking in a government class about privilege, and a lot of the kids in there were like, white privilege isn't a thing. And then my teacher was like, all right, so there's this African-American kid who was born 30 minutes from the school he's going to go to, and he's got a mom, no dad. Dad's never been around. And he has to work 2 jobs just to help support his family. Yeah. He's got multiple brothers and sisters, and and so he gets home late at night, and so his grades are a lot different than the white kid who gets picked up right after school or has a car, can drive home, does whatever he wants, doesn't have to have a job, his parents give him money. Like, I don't know, I think just not realizing how privileged you are is really prevalent in the white community, especially if you have money.
And I don't think it's a bad thing to be. It's really not a bad thing to be
No,
privileged.
It's not something you can control.
That's why I get
just
confused.
like you can't control not being privileged, you know?
And that's kind of why I'm confused, why people are afraid to be privileged. It's fine, but like just realize you have it. Like don't not realize you're maybe at this benchmark and then try to force other people up. And it's white people, like you said, your parents grew up out of nothing. It's not just black people who grow up poor or Hispanic people or vice versa. Like anybody can at any time become poor. Something could happen right now, we could become poor.
Yeah.
Anything could happen, And it's just like privilege is not permanent, and nothing's permanent, really. And I think there's a lot of times where people are like, oh yeah, I didn't grow up privileged, or privilege doesn't exist. And I'm like, that's not a good thing if privilege doesn't exist. We want to be privileged.
Yeah, it's a statistical fact that privilege exists.
Yeah.
Like, I think a lot of people have talked about like the analogy of the race. So you get all these people lined up, and you say, all right, if both your parents are still married, take 5 steps forward. If you've never gone hungry for a night, take 5 steps forward. So then by the end, you got all these people starting back here, and then all these people starting up here because of these different things that they've grown up with. Yep. And it's like, all right, how easy is it going to be to win the race if you're way up here versus all the way back? Like, there's things that it's just going to be, like, you can all get to the end, but it doesn't mean it's going to be easy. And people don't realize that, I guess.
And it's like, on an African-American side of things, like, education-wise, people are just like, oh, well, that's, I remember it was like, back then, that's just so far ago, like, you shouldn't blame that on now. Like, now you guys are out of it. And I'm like, okay, let's think about it this way. We have a whole you guys don't realize this, but, like, not you guys, but, like, I was talking to him. I was like, you guys don't realize, like, there's a whole 2-3 generation gap of African-American Negroes who were not educated because they were either slaves or could not afford it, or they weren't allowed in schools. And then the Separate but Equal Act came out, and our schools were still they were still separated and inferior to a normal school, not a white school, but any normal school system we should have in America. And it's like, now you look at African Americans and you see us with slang, or like we talk a lot of slang, or like we might be not going to college, and it's like you realize, like, because of that gap of them not getting like an education, it's like that carries over to their kids who are our parents, and they don't have a college degree because they don't have money, because their parents didn't have money, because they've been forced into these areas where it's like Title 21, and it's like they grow up in housing communities and stuff, and it's like, how do you expect us to just get an education just because you're born doesn't mean you're just because you're born in a better time doesn't necessarily mean you're gonna be with the time.
Yeah.
Like, neither of my parents. My mom just is actually going for a master's. She texts me every day. She's like, I never should have did this. But it's just funny because I'm like, well, look, you're doing better than most. And she's like, yeah, because it's true. Like, a lot of our African American parents did not go to college. If you did, it was for a sport.
Hold on. No, we keep going.
Like, if you did, it's for a sport. And that's the only way.
Mm-hmm.
If you sport or you're a singer or an athlete. And it's just like, that's an example of how it still affects us. Like, that's a whole 2 generations of parents, grandparents, or even our parents who didn't get an education. So it's like they don't have much to pass down to us besides street smarts.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think it's crazy looking at that. And I told him that, and he actually was like, that makes sense. And I think that's the benefit of sitting down and talking and not always yelling or texting over social media or, I'm going to text back and fire back because I snapped. It's like, no, just sit down and talk. You know?
Yeah, and this...
You'd be surprised what happens.
Like, this is... I feel like we haven't really mentioned it on the show, really, but the reason why we wanted to do something like this is we really wanted to sit down and talk about issues or whatever or whatnot. So it's important to sit down with an open mind, first of all. To sit down and think and talk about these things because they're not talked about every day. So
open mind, open ears, open heart.
Yeah.
Just open up. I heard things from his perspective, and I'm like, that makes sense.
Yeah.
You know? And those are things I heard, again, benefit of being in a private school where I didn't grow up with all my own people as African Americans. I don't want to say my own people, that sounds wrong. But, you know, like, that's the benefit of growing up around many different people. You get many different views, and then you get to decipher for your own what's true. And then if you have God on your side, you're like, all right, you can pray at night and think, what is the truth? And that's the benefit of us having, you know, that's what separates us from animals is we have that intellect, that spirit, that soul, and we can think about that. And that's something people, I think, don't use often. But, I mean, you know, nobody's perfect at it, so, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think we've made progress.
I do.
But we got a ways to go.
We do.
One of the things is the immigration process, like immigration reform.
I agree. That needs to change.
But, you know, it's all going to take a lot of
take time.
So
it's going to take time. Nothing's going to be a quick fix, you know?
Yeah.
Like, think about where African Americans have come 50 years ago versus now, even 10, 20 years ago till now. It's like just because it's a long ways away doesn't mean we stop pushing for it or fighting for it.
Yeah.
It's like if we all push towards it, we make progress. If none of us push towards it, we're not going to make progress.
It's the same argument with the gun violence one. So you're not going to...
We'll never ban all guns or we'll never get rid of gun. Okay, that doesn't mean we shouldn't try.
Yeah.
Like, if you never believe, like, even if you can put it in sports, nobody's ever going to be the best player. Does that mean you stop pushing for it?
Yeah.
No. It means you work harder, rather, to get as far as you can. You know? That's what separates great from average.
Yeah.
So, I think that's people skills, too. And everything else is you got to just keep fighting. Nothing comes easy.
Wise words from a black man. Alrighty. Well,
is that all for today?
I think that's a wrap.
All right. Thank you, Josh, very much.
Thank you for having me.
I feel like this was a very good conversation. Make sure to like, subscribe, tell all your friends. This has been the Mike Jordan Show. Thank you for listening.
Ooh. That was good. That was
33 minutes, baby.
That was beautiful. That was nice.
I fought Kim Kardashian once. Didn't go well for her. Yeah, I ate candy canes in October. It's no big deal, really. So there I was, peeing on the side of the road.
Do you brush your teeth in the shower?
You ever kissed a bear?
No.
Yeah, neither have I.
Just something about feet, man.
I just really, really love oatmeal.